Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher. Since he's here, I'll use the whole name. And I represent the 80th Assembly District in San Diego, just south of here all the way to the border. I'm also the chair of the Assembly Select Committee on Latina Inequities. It's a committee that we started exactly a year ago because of today. Today is Latina Equal Pay Day. The day which means nationally that Latinas had to work the entire year in 2020 and 11 extra months in 2021 in order to make what the average counterpart white male makes. Now, that's a national number. Here in California, so nationally we make about 57 cents on the dollar, but here in California it's even worse. Unfortunately, we still make 42 cents on the dollar of our white male counterpart, despite being the biggest demographic in the state. We make up 20% of the state, and yet we have the worst wage pay gap in the nation. So for Californians, California Latinas, we have to work all the way into January, 2 years more to make what our counterparts make in a year. We are the last equal pay day, and that obviously is a problem. For decades, we as Latinas have been underpaid, overlooked, and underseen. And that is why we started the Unseen Latinas Initiative, to make sure that we're invisible no more and to make sure that California actually tackles this pay gap. Through the initiative and informational hearings throughout this year, we've examined the long-lasting health and economic impacts of the pandemic on Latinas. We heard about Latinas and barriers in the legal field. We learned about particular challenges of Latinas in Hollywood, both on screen and behind the screen. We talk about disparities for Latinas that exist in every single field. A lot of times when we start talking about Latina Equal Pay Day, people suggest, or maybe just straight out say, it's because of the choices we make. Come on, Alejandra, it's okay. So when we talk about it, it's often blamed on us. You know, we have children, we enter low-wage careers because we want them. But I always point out, that the pay gap exists in every single field. If you look at waiters and waitresses, Latinas make less. If you look at doctors and surgeons, talk about the most educated portion of our society. Latinas make 68 cents on the dollar of the white male counterpart who are doctors and surgeons. There is something deeply wrong with society in the way that they view and have treated Latinas for decades. And we think it's time to change things. So today, again, we're going to be holding a hearing after this press conference, but we're going to hear from some outstanding Latinas who serve with me in the legislature as well as serve locally here. But before that, out of deference to being at the county board, and let's be honest, the Latina pay gap affects entire families, especially even those who are married to Latinas. So first, to start off, I'd like to introduce the chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, my husband, Nathan Fletcher, for some welcoming remarks.
Good morning, and welcome to the County of San Diego. It's a great honor for the county to welcome everyone who's here today and to be hosting today's hearing. Some days I'm chair of the County Board of Supervisors. Today, I am Lorena's husband, and really just here as an ally to call out the tremendous injustice. There's a basic issue of fairness, that you ought to be paid for your work, and you ought to be paid for the value of your work, and that should not be impacted because you are a Latina. But we know that it is. We know that a group of people that work twice as hard as anyone else have to work twice as long to make the same amount of money. And the reality is it's wrong. And it's wrong for everyone who's standing here today. It's also wrong for the message that we send to the future generations, that somehow their value and their work is not worth the same. And it's something that has to be addressed. And as my wife pointed out, it's not an issue if folks choose to go into different jobs or choose to take time off. A Latina surgeon makes a fraction of what a male surgeon makes, with the same degree and the same training and the same proficiency. And it is simply an injustice that has to change. And all of the folks that are here today, all of the workers that are here, the organizations that are here, the elected officials that are here today are to draw attention to this issue, to support the policies that come forward. And I know a little bit about this strong Latina. Just a bit. I know a little bit. Fierce, bold, intelligent, smart, and I see it every single day. I see the work and the action that my wife does and the commitment that she has for everyone else. But that same spirit is reflected in every single Latina who you see here today. And I have the dual honor of going home with the strong Latina, fierce, bold, who drives, and I get to come to work with one too. The first Latina in the 200-year history of the County of San Diego to serve on the Board of Supervisors, our Vice Chair, Nora Vargas. And she's here every day reminding this entire institution, and rest assured, I get reminded no matter where I go, I get reminded. I go to work, I get reminded. I go home, I get reminded. But reminding us of the intentional action we must take with everything that we do and elevating the issues that are there to make sure that we are doing them in an equitable standpoint, to make sure that we are taking into account these historic inequities and disparities. And so I'm here today to support the efforts that they're doing and to stand as an ally in the quest for fairness, for justice and for fairness, and for us as a society doing what's right. And with that, it is my great honor to introduce the Vice Chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, Nora Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Fletcher, and thank you for being an awesome ally. And I always know that if something is missing, I can always call Lorena. Somebody said, how did you all have such high vaccination rates, COVID in South Bay? And I said, well, between Lorena and I and the chair. So anyway, the assembly member. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here. Buenos dias. It really is an honor for me to serve as the first generation immigrant and the first Latinas to serve on the County Board of Supervisors, like the chair mentioned, in its 200-year history. And you know, today is Latina Equal Pay Day, and it serves as a reminder that while Latinas have made historic gains in the workforce, in the education center, and in politics, we're still having to catch up on wages. It's infuriating to me that Latinas are still making 55 cents on the dollar compared to white men. And although I'm really, really proud to be here today and join my friend and my fierce representative, I'm really lucky to have Assemblymember Gonzalez as my representative. We're not only here to raise awareness, right, about the real barriers that Latinas face in their career advancement to encourage, but also what I want to do today is encourage policymakers, corporations, government, and employers to do better and be intentional about making real change. Whether it's ensuring Latinas are on boards or executive positions, we need to make sure that there are equal opportunities in career advancement. As some of you may know, Latinas were among the most impacted by the pandemic when it comes to unemployment. According to the U.S. Labor of Statistics, nationally, women's unemployment has increased by 2.9% more than men's. And additionally, Latinas employed in the labor force dropped to 56.5% last year. Latinas' earning ratio compared to white men changed only 4% between 1988 and 2019. Based on the current rate of progress, Latinas will not reach equal pay to white Latinos until 2220. That is why the work that we do here every day and what we're doing today in our collaboration is truly to bring everyone together and to begin to demand that things change. There is no economy without Latinas. We are the essential workers, we're the childcare providers, we're the business owners, we're the doctors, we're the elected officials. And together, we're gonna ensure that employers value Latinas equally for all contributions. Es un honor para mí estar aquí con ustedes por esta causa tan importante como la primera mujer latina representando el condado de San Diego en su historia. Hoy celebramos el legado y la igualdad de pago para las mujeres latinas porque las mujeres latinas seguimos ganando cerca de la mitad de lo que gana un hombre blanco en Estados Unidos. Estoy muy orgullosa de trabajar en esta causa con mi representante, la asambleísta Lorena Gonzalez, para poder solucionar este problema. Creo yo que es sumamente importante, debemos seguir trabajando y pidiendo a los empresarios, negocios y gente en posiciones de influencia tienen que eliminar estas barreras para que las mujeres latinas puedan alcanzar posiciones ejecutivas y que puedan avanzar en sus carreras. Es sumamente importante para todos nosotros. Y con eso, it is my pleasure to introduce a woman who is helping redefine the narrative of the potential of Latinas in the workforce, the daughter of farm workers who became a successful entrepreneur and now a state assemblywoman. Please help me and welcome from the 57th Assembly District, Assemblywoman Lisa Calderon. Thank you. You're welcome. Welcome to San Diego.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Vargas. Good afternoon. My name's Lisa Calderon, and I represent the 57th Assembly District. I'm also here as a commissioner for the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. As a daughter of farm workers, I remember my grandmother going to work in the tomato fields, where she worked for decades until she couldn't do that work anymore. She ultimately retired from a garlic factory. And when she retired, she had never owned a home, she didn't have a pension, and she didn't have health insurance or a checking account. That's why I'm so honored to be here today to join this group of extraordinary women. We stand together to bring awareness to the pay gap impacting Latinas in our communities and across the state. Over the last decade, Latinas have significantly increased their high school graduation rate. We are widely represented in teaching, law, medicine, management professionals, and political office. Yet despite this progress, Latinas will not reach equal pay with white, non-Latino men for several years. Currently, Latinas in the U.S. are paid on average 45% less than white men and 30% less than white women, costing Latinas $29,000 each per year. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated the problem. Women of color are overrepresented in industries where jobs are rapidly disappearing because of the pandemic, such as hotels, restaurants, and retail. Through May 2020, 28% of Latinas lost their jobs, compared to the much lower rate of 9% for white women. Undocumented Latinas experienced a 36% rate of job loss, meaning that 1 in every 3 undocumented Latinas in 2020 in California lost their job. That is why I'm pleased to be speaking today on behalf of the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. The Commission has worked diligently for over 50 years to eliminate inequities affecting the women of California. The Commission routinely holds public hearings and conducts research and policy advocacy on a variety of issues, such as with today's hearing on the Latina Pay Gap. Women have shown time and time again that when we lead, everything from companies to communities are transformed. The Commission has collaborated with the first partner on the Equal Pay California campaign effort to draw attention to the persistent wage gap in our state, particularly for women of color. I hope that everyone here is ready to join the fight to ensure that the contributions of Latinas are recognized, elevated, and supported as we work to build back a better California for all. I'd now like to introduce Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis from National City.
All right, buenos dias, everyone. Buenos dias, muchachas. Pues bueno, today we are here to say we are worth more than 55 cents, right, ladies? For the same amount of work, the same amount of education, and the same blood, sweat, and tears that each of these Latina women put in to their jobs, they should be, and we should be recognized at 100% in the pay. And so I'm very proud to stand with all of these wonderful mujeres here. Our first supervisor, Latina supervisor, Ms. Nora Vargas, and my district representative, as well as a fighter, a survivor, our assemblista. Let's give her a big round of applause, Ms. Lorena Gonzalez. And so we know that around half of Latina mothers, and I'm proud to be a Latina mother, we are key bread for their families. We are the providers, which means that their households rely heavily on the wages to make ends meet and get ahead. However, Latina moms are just paid, again, less than 46 cents for every dollar paid to white non-Latino fathers. In California, that number is lower at 36 cents. More than 3 million family households in the United States are headed by Latinas. Let me repeat that. More than 3 million family households in the United States are headed by Latinas. And 30.5% of these households, unfortunately, live below the poverty level. compared to 8.6% of all U.S. households. Again, this means that more than 1 million Latina-headed households live in poverty. So today, we stand in solidarity with all of the women here to support the Equal Pay Wage Campaign. And thank you so much. We're getting support from our firefighters. Eso! Because whether they are firefighters on the front line, the essential workers cleaning our buildings, the people standing here representing you, we deserve 100% of the pay. And so with that, I would like to introduce Miss Dr. Inés González Pérez Chica, Executive Director of Mana de San Diego.
Good morning, buenos dias. I'd like to thank the Assemblywoman Gonzalez Fletcher for inviting Mana de San Diego to join her and the rest of the leaders and advocates to claim what is just. You would think that with a college degree, Latinas would see a reduction in the pay gap. That's not the case. Latinas are pursuing higher education more than ever before and still face a pay gap. In fact, the pay gap is largest for Latinas with a bachelor's degree, who on average earn 37% less than white men with a bachelor's degree. The Latina pay gap is constant, no matter what work you do or how educated you are. Mana de San Diego and the Kim Center recently surveyed Mana members here in San Diego and found that 1/3 of survey participants experience discrimination in the workplace. Less than half of survey participants believe they are paid fairly and that they have a fair chance of promotion. 2/3 of participants were denied raises or promotions after asking for them. Less than 2/3 of participants feel their work contributions are valued and rewarded at their organization. Latinas are not getting the support they need from their supervisors in areas that are key to their workplace well-being and career development. The pay gap widens the wealth gap. Single Latinas between the age of 18 to 64 have a median wealth of only $1,200, 4% of the wealth of white men. This alarming statistic should be a wake-up call for all of us. The pay gap must be eliminated. COVID-19 shined a light on society's persistent inequalities. The wage gap is one clear way to chip at a root cause of inequality. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Karen Bettencourt, member of Unite Here Local 30.
Hi, my name is Karen Bettencourt. I'm 20 years old and I live in the South Bay in between San Isidro and Otay. I work in the hospitality industry for nearly 10 years, and over the course of that time, I have seen and been the subject of a variety of injustices, especially economic injustice. Not getting paid the same wages as men was what made me the angriest, because I knew that I was worth more and I was always doing the same work as they were. Years ago, I was working at McDonald's. I was promoted from being a cashier to a floor manager. I was really excited because I thought that I was being recognized and rewarded for my hard work and dedication to my job. But soon did I realize that that was not the case. The other floor managers beside me was a young man, maybe a couple years older than me, who was also promoted from cashier to floor manager a few months before me. We had the same responsibilities and performed the same work, but somehow he was making $2.50 an hour more than I was. And I was only making $1 above minimum wage as it was. After a few months, I finally asked my manager why I was making so much less than he was, and I was told that I needed to take a step down in order to move up. That answer really upset me. That combined with the workload and the other manager always teasing me that he was making more money than I was, finally led me to quit. It just wasn't worth it. My next job was as a room service attendant at a hotel where the workers were represented by Unite Here Local 30, a labor union that represent hospitality workers. Those workers had a union contract with the wages that were fair for everybody. Now I work as an organizer for Unite Here, where I get to represent Latinas like myself to ensure that they have a fair and equitable workplace with a good pay, making the same money and having the same benefits as their male colleagues. Thank you. Next, we have Majority Leader Lois Reyes.
Wow, you're going to hear a whole lot of statistics from all of us. And sometimes you hear different statistics. The bottom line is that we're not making the same as our white male counterpart. The Unseen Latinas Select Committee is something that Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez created. And we are so grateful to her. We've already had a number of hearings. This is just one more event today to again shed light on the unseen Latinas. When we're talking about the pay gap between Latinas and the white male counterpart, I've got to tell you that the topic is significant in my life because of personal and professional connection that I have to it. I'm an attorney by trade, and everything that we talk about, I have a bachelor's degree, I have a Juris Doctorate, I passed the bar, I became an attorney, and yet we still see the wage gap between the males and the females and Latinas and the white males. Segregation into low-paid, low-quality jobs leaves many Latinas without good benefits and good pay. And remember, it's what you make during your working years that determines what your pension is going to be. So it affects us not just while we're working, but it's going to affect us when we retire as well. We don't have as much money into the system as our white male counterpart, even if we're just talking about Social Security. During the pandemic, Latinas were much more likely than other groups to have needed to take leave from work, paid or unpaid, to take care of an ill family member. That's 22.5% compared to 8.3% overall. Or to take time off for childcare that was not illness related, 9.6% for Latinas compared to 5.9% overall. Although we see the impact through these statistics, we need to look beyond these statistics and see our Latina women and look at how this affects them personally as individuals. So it's not just statistics, and you'll hear lots of it from me and from everybody else, but it is the individual women who are being affected by this. That is what we have to remember. We have to know that this affects not just that woman, but her entire family. Her kids are going to be affected by the fact that their mother is receiving a whole lot less than the white male counterpart. The family as a whole is going to be affected. And the emotional toll it takes on them because of these inequalities cannot be quantified. You're not going to find a statistic on that, but you all know what the reality is. This underscores the challenges Latinas face as breadwinners and primary caregivers without sufficient social infrastructure like paid family leave and affordable child or elder care, something that we've been fighting for since I arrived there in Sacramento in 2016, and been fighting for it even before that. These inequities were here even before the pandemic, but this pandemic has highlighted and magnified these inequities, these inequalities. Because of the responsibility we have to tackle these challenges, I'm excited to be here today and I look forward to learning more about our collaborating efforts to make our communities more inclusive and equitable. Quiero decir que estamos aquí para las trabajadoras, no para nadie más. Son las trabajadoras las que nos dan toda la fuerza para poder estar aquí, para decirle a todo el mundo que lo que está pasando es incorrecto, es injusto, y si es injusto es incorrecto y tenemos que cambiarlo. Podemos ver varias maneras de hacerlo, pero tenemos que ser intencionales en lo que vamos a hacer. We must be intentional. If we think we're going to change it just by talking about it, it will never happen. The fact that we now have a select committee is because Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez was intentional about saying something has to change. We have to shed a light on this. We have to study it. We have to give you the statistics because sometimes people think it's not that bad. It is that bad in every area possible. And now I would like to introduce to all of you a dear colleague of mine who is the chair of the Women's Caucus for the California legislature, a fierce fighter, especially when it comes to inequalities, not only for Latinas, but also when it comes to environmental justice. Please welcome my dear friend, Assemblywoman ¿Dónde estás? Christina Garcia.
Gracias. Gracias. Buenos días. I want to start off by thanking and recognizing the leadership of Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, not just in creating this select committee, but I've had the privilege of serving with her for 9 years in the legislature. And like many of you have seen firsthand how fierce she is in ensuring that there's justice for all of our communities, and in this case specifically for Latina women, and that we're getting what we are worth out there. And I will say, while you've been hearing a lot about the statistics about how we're not being paid and how long we have to work to overcome that pay gap, I also know that from all those fair Latinas around me, that oftentimes it's exhausting. It's exhausting, but in spite of that, we continue to thrive and move forward because of our families and because we have to make sure that we open new opportunities for their women out there. And so I want to recognize Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez for that tenacity that she's had. Intentionality matters. Intentionality matters, and there are plenty of Latinas out there who are qualified to do the work and get their fair share of the pie. When we were in the legislature, at some point, we were down to just 3 Latinas. We were intentional about that. Another Latino caucus has reached equity in there, and we have risen the number of Latinas to almost 20 in the legislature. An example of intentionality mattering to ensure that we have equity out there. I've been working for the last few years on corporate boards and diversity on corporate boards. And so it's not a surprise that Latinas are also the most unseen and unrepresented on corporate boards out there. We have passed 2 legislations to improve diversity on corporate boards, but in spite of that, Latinas continue to be only 3% of corporate board directors in the state of California. You should be pretty upset about that. But it's more upsetting when Latinos make 39% of the population, meaning that 1 in 5 of the people here in California are Latinas out there, and we are not on these boards. It's a detriment to these companies when they're missing out on the market share of all those Latinas out there. And it's a detriment to our community when we're not on these boards as well, making decisions out there. So as we talk about the pay inequities, there's lots of inequities out there. The select committee, through the leadership of our chair, has been highlighting that out there. I just want to make it clear that today's not a day of celebration. Today is a day of recognition and a day of doubling down the efforts to ensure that we move this community forward out there and that Latinas get what they earned and what they deserve out there. And so I'm excited for today's hearing, and I want to thank all of the fierce leaders that are here with us today. And I have the pleasure of introducing Assembly Member Tasha Borner-Horvath, who's also from the San Diego area, who is a Latina adjacent sister here with us as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina. I like it, Latina adjacent. My name's Tasha Borner-Horvath, and I serve as a state assembly member for North County, San Diego, Encinitas, Carlsbad, Oceanside Vista, and Camp Pendleton. And it's an honor to join you today because we're standing here because any progress women might be making in shrinking the gender pay gap, Latinas are not sharing in that progress. In fact, the reality for my Latina sisters is that their pay gap with white male counterparts is not only substantially worse than the average pay gap between all women and men, is actually widened over the last 10 years in California from 45 cents to the dollar relative to white male counterparts to 42 cents. In fact, most estimates don't show Latinas reaching national parity until 22-24. That's 2 centuries from now. Changing this trend will take deliberate, concerted action. Action that includes changing corporate culture where 1 in 5 Californians, Latina women, are paid less and less compared to their white male counterparts. Actions that include having our state leading the way, like requiring female representation on corporate boards, or my bill 931, which increases the representation of women on corporate boards, or my bill AB 467 that says you can't pay women less than men on state competitions on state lands. We have done so much, but we have not done enough for our Latina sisters, and that's what we're here today about. It took concerted effort to create this wage gap, and these Latina sisters and myself and a bunch of us others are here today because it will take the concerted effort of all of us to reverse it. To that end, I'm committed to joining my Latina colleagues today at the committee hearing and listening with open ears as to what steps we can and should and will take to reverse the course of and increase reverse the course and decrease the Latina pay gap here in California. And with this, I'd like to pass it back to my friend and colleague, Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez.
So there's a lot of people that should be speaking even more, but we wanted to make sure to start this. Our committee hearing starts at 12:30, where we will dig into some of those statistics we talked about, dig into some of the efforts being made in California to change that. And I think it's really important. I think Tasha brought it up, but the women's pay gap in California is decreasing. It's decreasing despite the fact that the most amount of women in California, Latinas, our pay gap is increasing. So if you took us out of the equation, we're doing really good on the women's pay gap in California, and really terrible for Latinas. And so I think it's important to say that, because until we're intentional, we've as my sister Christina Garcia said, we've done a lot. I mean, we continue to pass these bills. We were really excited about corporate boards, ensuring that there are women on corporate boards, ensuring there are people of color on corporate boards, and yet when the numbers came back to us, apparently we're not in that mix, you know. It increased white women on corporate boards, it increased black women on corporate boards, increased Asian women on corporate boards, increased Latino men on corporate boards, but like, I don't know. They skipped over somebody. And that continues to happen. And until we call it out for what it is, it won't stop. And that's what we're trying to do today. I cannot wait. 200 years obviously won't be around. My daughter won't be around in 200 years. Her daughter, if she should ever bless me with one, won't be around, no pressure, in 200 years. But you know, this is what we face, and this is what we're trying to tackle here. So thank you for showing your support. I do want to give a shout out, because it was mentioned, but I want to make sure it's highlighted. Our Unite Here worker pointed out something. Our only so far path, there are two paths, my husband often reminds me of the other, that we ensure equal pay. One is in the military, women get paid the same as men, and two is with a union contract. So there are solutions. It's a matter of finding those solutions, and that's what we're going to do today.